and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Good evening.
You're listening to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. We thank you for tuning in and hope you enjoy another exciting episode of our show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. It's six-man Dean Geronimo in the studio, waiting for my man Mark Lee to get off the other show. But it is February 8th, 2021. So another week has started. You know, sometimes people are not ready for Mondays, but you know what? We're here now, so let's see what we can do to make it a good week. In recent news, law enforcement failed to act on intel ahead of the Capitol riot. And that's a report that came out. It's on the NewYorkPost.com. This is a sprawling network of federal and local law enforcement across the United States that is designed to stave off terrorist threats. Failed to protect the Capitol on January 6th because officials did not act on intelligence that had been gathered prior to the riot, a report said Monday. The intelligence included warnings from federal, local law enforcement fusion centers across the country that warned of protesters traveling to D.C. with weapons, the Wall Street Journal reported, citing internal documents viewed by the newspaper. Now, the FBI field office also warned the federal and local agencies handling security for the protests of demonstrators sharing maps of the Capitol and a call for war, the Journal reported. But despite the warnings, the intelligence arm of the Department of Homeland Security wrote there was nothing significant to report in a January 5 memo to law enforcement across the country. As a result, the security forces in D.C. were woefully unprepared for the mob of President that guy supporters who stormed the Capitol, leaving 5 people dead, including the Capitol police officer. Now, according to the Journal, the heads of the nationwide fusion centers where local law enforcement share intelligence with federal authorities, hosted a call on the 4th of January to warn of the number of participants planning to bring weapons to Stop the Steal rally. The intelligence was shared with the Washington, D.C. Fusion Center and in turn with the offices tasked with providing security for the January 6th event. Now, the Department of Homeland Security declined to tell the Journal if it took any action based on the call, while the FBI said it held a separate call to brief other law enforcement officials about the possibility of protesters bringing weapons to the rally. Now, the Journal also highlighted a report from the FBI field office in Norfolk, Virginia, that pointed to a message board where one user was urging protesters to go there ready for war and sharing maps of the Capitol complex. The intelligence was shared with the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Washington, but not acted on by the FBI, according to the report. Now, the Bureau told the newspaper the information was uncorroborated and not linked to specific suspects, which made following up on it difficult. Now, in the week since the riot, more than 100 people have been charged with federal crimes, including members of the Proud Boys and fringe groups such as the Oath Keepers, who allegedly conspired together prior to the riot. So that goes to show when information is put out there and, you know, listing something that may possibly take place and it's not acted upon. January 6th could have been avoided had law enforcement properly listened to the reports and the rumblings that were going on. However, what's done is done now. Hopefully those individuals will receive their just punishments. I hope the punishments are swift and severe. And it is the opinion of Dean Geronimo, not the opinion of Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. But we'll get another point of view on that, because right now, from NJ to NC, I'm in the studio with my right-hand man, Mark Lee. So, Mark, tell me what's good in your neck of the woods, my brother.
Well, I'm just doing good, keeping busy, doing my other streaming podcasts and keeping busy with all kinds of amazing guests and all of that, but just keeping things rolling along. Still a little bit upset that Tom Brady won another Super Bowl, because I was not rooting for him. I was actually wanting at least a good game, and it wasn't even close. And then I was also definitely not wanting him to win. I was hoping that Kansas City and, Mr. Mahomes would win, but I did not have any such luck in those categories. And I did see something that I thought was kind of funny, and I was going to see if I can pull it up and everything. But apparently, that person that used to be at 1600, and I heard you represent him earlier, that man that incited a riot and needs to get impeached and all of that kind of stuff. But that man, apparently his son is mad at the Super Bowl, because he suspects that the Super Bowl commercials were an example of the country's woketopia. I think that's the word he used, was woketopia and everything. Woketopia. I think that he's that is something negative or something, but I want to see if I can't pull up the article. But yeah, apparently Don Jr. was not too pleased at the Super Bowl commercials. Like I said, I saw some that were funny, and I saw some that actually I enjoyed. I kind of enjoyed the one with Cardi B and the old Wayne's World gang, and it was still the original actors. So I was actually glad that they could find the actors and that they were still able to act and all of that. But I enjoyed that one. There were a couple of other ones that I enjoyed as well. I'm still not sure. And there's some halftime shows that I enjoy, and I'm still not sure what the heck was going on in this halftime show, because it was kind of like different. And like I said, nothing against the Weeknd and the leader of the halftime show and all, but I just wasn't quite feeling it like I felt some other halftime shows. I don't know how you felt about the halftime show, but it was just kind of like a little weird.
I actually didn't. I watched the first quarter, and then after that, I was like, you know what? I'm not even interested in it right now. I don't care really who wins. You know what? And I just started watching Netflix and kind of like relaxed out. That's about it. My Ravens weren't playing, so it is whoever won the Super Bowl won the Super Bowl. It's like,
yeah. Like I said, I didn't really have
football,
Yeah, I didn't have a dog in the fight, really. Like I said, my Vikings ain't done nothing, and who knows when. And definitely, I sometimes root for my people who I support them if their team is in it. So I would have been supporting your Ravens if the Ravens had made it, and definitely it might have had to grit my teeth, but I would have supported my brother if the Bears had made it and everything of that nature. It might have been gritting my teeth, but I still would have supported it because, it's younger brother and everything. But like I said, but I didn't have a dog in this fight whatsoever, even though I did find out, and I'm not sure the player's position or what he did, but apparently this is the first Super Bowl that represents North Carolina Central University. Because then when I was at my day job, somebody pulled up an article and said that one of the players for Tampa Bay is a North Carolina Central University graduate. So, and I don't think that even though Massey and Clark and a number of other players have done decent in the NFL, apparently none of them have a Super Bowl ring. So apparently this gentleman, and I'm going to look it up and see if I can find out who it is, but he was the first person to have a Super Bowl ring from North Carolina University. But here's what Donald Trump Jr. said. He said he was not impressed with the Super Bowl 2021 commercial lineup. The son of the former president tuned into the big game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday, but was rolling his eyes at the broadcast, almost immediately had the typical sought-after ad breaks. He did not elaborate as to which commercials prompted him to take to Twitter to share his ire. However, the 2021 event featured a number of commercials that might fall under the category of woke. So it says, and apparently he wrote in one commercial in, and it's already woketopia. For example, Bruce Springsteen apparently had a Jeep commercial in which he called on Americans to find common ground and unite in the middle on issues. The NFL received some jabs on social media after debuting an ad for its Inspired Change initiative, pledging $250 million to fight racial equality. And so basically, he's just mad because some of these commercials were actually doing the opposite of what he and his dad had been doing while they were in office. So now it's making more sense to me.
Right. Make America make sense again. Damn being great. In fact, I'm still trying to figure out when America was ever great. You know, in their eyes, what they were unimpressed with the Super Bowl. Man, we were unimpressed with you, your whole entire family, and your administration for 4 long years. You know what I mean? And then add to it, the pandemic came during your administration. You tried to will it away, calling it, you know, the China virus and all this other stupid stuff. Now look at all of the people who have unfortunately lost their lives because of poor planning and as has been said, you know, piss poor preparation promotes piss poor performance. Piss poor performance promotes pain, and there's been a lot of pain with all of the you know, people who unfortunately lost their lives, and it could possibly have been avoided had we had someone with a brain and not an ego. So, you know, when you look at it, who cares what Donald Trump? Man, go crawl in your hole somewhere. Go work for your dad. You know, be a bellhop at one of his hotels. Do something. Just shut up. Sit down, because you're not important. You never mattered, and you're just in the way. You know,
totally in the way and all of that. And by the way, the gentleman that made the Super Bowl from North Carolina Central University is none other than Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith became North Carolina Central University's first Super Bowl champion when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeated the Kansas City Chiefs. A native of Upper Marlboro, Maryland, he made history on the opening kickoff of the game by becoming just the third Eagle in school history to play in the Super Bowl, joining Richard Sly of the Raiders in Super Bowl II and Louis Breeden of the Bengals in Super Bowl 16. So definitely, and then Prairie View's Quentin Bell was the other HBCU graduate that got to win a ring with the Bucs as well. So says that he was a fourth-round pick in 2016 by the Buccaneers, and he has spent all of his 5 years with that particular team. So he came to Durham back in 2011 on a partial scholarship and redshirted as a true freshman, and then he was one of the building blocks for the program as it was, I think, going into Division I and all of that. So it looks like he's a defensive kind of person and all of that. So definitely it's definitely glad to see that he got a Super Bowl ring and is involved in the Super Bowl and all of that. So as a senior, apparently he ranked third in the MEAC with a team best 11 passes defended, 2 interceptions, and 9 breakups while adding 52 tackles. And he also led the conference and ranked 10th in the nation with an average of 28.1 yards per kickoff return. So looks like he had a pretty good career at Central, and now he can add Super Bowl champion to his resume.
Mm-hmm. Ain't nothing wrong with that. That defense was they said was the truth. So when you look at it, I say, well, the defense actually, you know, they say offense wins games, defense wins championships, but you know it's being misdirected right now because everybody's caught up in the hype of one being so great. But you know, for me, there was one who supported that dude. So you get no wins. I don't care what you do. I don't care how athletic or how many games you win or how many Super Bowl rings you win. You sided on the side of racism. So to me, you're worth less. And I don't care what anybody says. They don't have to agree with me. I'm not doing it for likes. I don't care if they care about it or not. I do have choice words if they decide to ask me about it, though. So, you know.
You're right.
It is what it is. Some people stand for things and don't move in their convictions. I happen to be one of them.
Oh, I hear you. I cannot agree with you more. I was actually talking on the show the fact that, you know, definitely he does some crazy things. He was my fantasy quarterback, but that's the only thing that he did good for me, and he didn't even help me then because he actually choked in a game or two during the regular season that cost me a good seat and everything. So in that sense, it didn't even help me because I remember he choked in one of them games, and I think that's why even though I made the playoffs, I probably could have made it even better if he had not choked in one of them early playoff games. And unfortunately, I don't know how you felt, and I know I think I heard a bell and everything, but I also felt that the referees were a little bit too much into the game. I felt that the referees were a little bit too much into the game, and I know that, sometimes people complaining about the referees need to be in the games or they don't need to be in the games, but I thought some of those calls were petty and some of them were much too early. I'm actually going to reach out to the lady referee and see if we can't get her on one of our shows, because I want to know why she called the calls that she called. But you know me, I'm just bold enough to try. Like I said, all they can do is say no.
That's football now has evolved into patty cake, kind of. So, I long for the days when it used to be very much different, but we're here now. So let's get to this call and find out who's actually on the line. Let's see who we got here. Welcome to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. You are now on the line. Tell us who you are and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, good. Hey, guys, it's Tom Russell. We talked. I met you on Potted.
Yes, and you were going to tell me about your different things that you've got going on. I love having amazing guests. So share a little bit about your story, because I definitely love having various entrepreneurs, and I know that that's part of where your space is, but you also do a lot of great work and everything. So definitely if you'll share a little bit about your story, we'll go from there, because that's the way we do things.
Well, that's awesome. Hey, it was great listening to your take on the Super Bowl. I found it difficult to stay awake. It was so one-sided I had to go to sleep. So anyway, again, my name is Tom Russell. I've done a number of different things. One of the things that I made my life change was when I turned 52, I made the decision to write my first book. And it was years in coming, and I decided that I wanted to change my life where I didn't worry about not accomplishing something, and I gave up on myself for so many years, and I finally decided that I was going to write my first book at 52, and my life changed dramatically after that, because I no longer feared success. I didn't even fear failure, but I just didn't fear success anymore. And I just kept moving on. And the first book I wrote was Finding Your True North, a bullied teen's journey of hope. And it's about a young boy who was bullied in school, and he lived in a dysfunctional family with an alcoholic father, and he lost all self-confidence because of that. And I wanted to write a book about these 5 core values of sacrifice, integrity, respect, responsibility, and courage. And I wanted to integrate that into this young man's life so he can build up his self-confidence, so he can go back to dealing with the bullies in school and trying to deal with his father. And it's a transformative thing for a lot of people who've read the book. And I didn't write the book for fame or fortune or anything like that. I wrote it because the message is so important. It's a universal message by living out those 5 core values, and it's changed a lot of people's lives, and I'm really happy I did that.
It's interesting you bring up that concept of that self-defeat and everything, and I've actually talked about that on a number of my shows, both here as well as on some of the streaming podcasts, because I do find too often that we do way too much of that we sit there and we defeat ourselves before we even had a chance to begin the journey. So how did you get over that and everything? Because I do think that that's something that too often just society in general, but I don't care whether it's in North Carolina where I'm based or New Jersey where Dean is, or around the globe, because I've even heard this from friends of mine that are in Australia and India and a number of other countries around the world, that we kind of defeat ourselves before we even had a chance to get into the fight. I mean, it's kind of hard to lose a boxing match if you are to win a boxing match if you're at least not going to throw some punches. It seems like we even walk out the ring before the match has even started. So I just wondered how you got past all of that.
Well, I think a lot of people do approach things in their life where they decide that they want to do something. You know, they decide they want to lose weight, or they decide they want to start exercising, and that's where it ends. There's no plan. So what I saw this in some of the YouTube video a while back. It was like a TED Talks or something like that, and it would resonate with me. But it was like instead of saying I decided to do something, I said I decided to do something because I had to find my why. Because if you can't find your why, you're going to have to find it very difficult to even accomplish anything, because you reach that plateau and the barrier in your life where you feel like you're not worthy of whatever it is you want to accomplish, and then you start worrying about what other people think. Well, I stopped worrying about what other people thought, and I just made that decision because I needed to prove to myself that I could actually go to that extra barrier, because in the title of the book, it's called Finding Your True North. And what the whole idea about finding your true north is, you have a dream, right? You have something that you want to really push towards. But the minute you make that decision, then you have these little branches in the tree, if you will, that you find these obstacles, that you start going that way instead of going upwards, and you follow that path, and then you lose sight of where you wanted to go. So you have to make that conscious decision to pull back and start moving towards that goal that you want, and make sure that dream is concrete and you can feel it, you can taste it, you can smell it. This is something that you want really badly. And that's how I was when I turned 52. I finally said enough is enough. I'm just tired. I'm so tired of not doing the things that I really wanted to do. And it just moved me. It transformed me. And instead of saying I'm going to write the book, I decided to write the book. I wrote it. I wrote it in 4 months, actually 3.5 months, and I worked on getting it published. I self-published it with someone. Excuse me. And then it was like, here's what happened. I'm thinking, I'm not sure if either of you have written a book or not, but a lot of people, when they write something, they stop right there. They don't go to the extra step of publishing it. And then after they publish it, they don't do anything to get themselves out into the market. And one of the hardest things to do is self-promote yourself. It really is.
Right.
And so I ended up, I went to the local newspaper. I showed them my book and said, would you be interested in doing an interview with me? And 2 weeks later, they called me up. They did the interview, and they did the article on me. And I said, well, that worked. Why not go to another newspaper? So I walked in another newspaper and did my spiel, handed the book, and said, well, wait a minute. We have a reporter here. Let's do the interview now. So they did that. And so that worked, and then I did another newspaper, and the same exact thing. And the thing was, is I was never worried, guys. I was never worried about a no, because I said, you know, what's worse that's going to happen? Not interested. No, we don't want to do this. And I could do that all day long, and I don't worry about that, because you know the worst no you're ever going to get is the one you don't ask. And right. I just kept moving on, and I just one step out, and I always thought about what's next. I've achieved this. I always thought about what's next. What am I going to do to propel me further? And so I walked into Barnes & Noble, and I said, I have this book on bullying. Would you be interested in carrying it? And he didn't answer me back. He says, I said, oh, by the way, this newspaper is doing an article on me. And they said, well, he goes, well, wait a minute. I'm going to go ahead and order 20 books, and I would like you to come in October during Anti-Bullying Month, and I want you to do a book signing. Okay, that floored me, and so I did the book signing, and then after that he asked me to come back in April to do another book signing, and then he asked me again to come back in October after I published my second book, Nowhere Man, and do another book signing. It all came about because I just decided to do something rather than hope for something. You got to, in order to make things happen in your life, you have to go out and make things happen. And for me to tell you guys this now, before I wrote my first book, I couldn't do it because I didn't believe in myself. And once that belief started just being instilled in me, nothing is stopping me from what I want to do, whether it's in writing another book or anything else, because I know that I can do so many different things because I believe in myself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I know that you really write about and that you actually touched on and everything was that whole concept of being bullied and all of that. So do you think that that is actually something that drives you in terms of your desire to continue to write these books and get this word out and everything? The fact that you were actually bullied yourself and all of that when you were a teenager, and like you said, now you're in your early 50s. But how much did that whole concept of being bullied inspire your writing? And then I'd also love to hear more about the other title of the book, Nowhere Man, because that just seems like a book title of nothing else. It catches your ears and everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, the whole idea about the book, I wanted to write about those 5 core values, and I worked with, for 14 years, past 14 years, I've been working with an organization called 5 Star Life. It's an organization that we work with. We mentor middle school kids. And we talk about those 5 core values, but we also talk about bullying. I always told them about my story when I was in middle school, because you guys can't see me now, but I was a lot thinner, but my nose, I consider my nose to be the most prominent feature on my face, and it was big. And kids in school would say things like, you get Pinocchio competition, or your nose arrives in the room 5 minutes before you do, or your nose needs its own zip code. So those things I started to believe. You know, when people start saying these things, you start believing that people will define you by how you look. And that's the worst place to be in, because, when you're in middle school, you really don't have an identity. It's really hard to, decide what you want to do with your life. So I lived that life. I put newspapers on my mirror because I didn't want to look at myself. And when I saw pictures of myself wherever in the yearbook or wherever, that's the first thing I saw. So that's how I defined myself. But at some point in my life, I made that decision that how I look doesn't really define who I am as a person. And this is where I started gaining empathy for other people, because I saw the things that were going on with other kids and other people who felt that they were being oppressed, and they were being told that they weren't worth anything, that they're worth a piece of trash, And I just could not stand watching that happen. But that didn't just happen overnight, because that was in middle school and then in high school. It wasn't until I started working with 5 Star Life that I realized that something more has to be done in that scope of talking about bullying. I'm not really fond of that word anyway, but it's the canned word that everyone wants to talk about, and it's something that so many kids they take everything that people say as truth, because the more people say something about you, insult you, the more you start believing it. And you don't have anything to fall back on, because you don't feel like there's not enough support. And that's the reason why I wanted to write this book, because I wanted to give hope for so many other people who felt like they were on the bottom end, and it just didn't work. The idea with Nowhere Man, in the first book, I had a homeless person in there. His name is called Pops. And that was a focal point in the book. And I wanted to learn more about homeless people. And I talked to quite a few people. And the main character in this book, he was an insurance executive, and he gets amnesia through a blow to his head, and he becomes homeless. And so I depict what life is like as a homeless person, the degradation, the how people treat a homeless person with inequity, and I wanted to make a homeless person a human being versus the scourge of society. And I'm really happy with how the book, because when you write a book, you try to think of it as a screenplay, and this is how this book will end up coming out. It felt like it as I was writing a screenplay. But he ends up eventually getting his memory back, and he has to make that decision where a lot of people do. It says, well, do I go back to my life the way it was before, or do I follow the path of learning more about the human condition when I was a homeless person. So there was a dilemma in that book, and I'm very proud of that book.
Yeah, it sounds like a great book, and a lot of times we don't even pay attention to the homeless folks that are out there, and I know we've talked about that on this show a number of times, but a lot of times we try to dismiss them or ignore them, but a lot of times they have amazing stories if we'll just sit back there and pay attention and listen to them and all of that, and sometimes they have actually lived life a lot more than we've even lived life, and we can even learn from the homeless just like we can learn from a lot of other folks. But I do think that sometimes we put them in that nowhere category or that nobody category, and it sounds to me like that's one of the things that you're fighting against is some of those stereotypes that people have about various people.
Well, you just want to listen. They want you to listen. You know, a lot of homeless people that I've had contact are very reluctant to lay themselves out there because they don't want to admit their failures. And so, but it takes a lot of talking, a lot of trust to be infused in a conversation and to realize you don't want anything out of them other than you as a person showing someone that care. And the idea for the one part in the book, I talk about what happened with me in Baltimore. I was at a restaurant at a Subway, and I saw this homeless guy sitting down, and I walked up to the cashier and I asked, this gentleman come in here a lot? He says, yeah, he's just a homeless person. He doesn't do anything. He just hopes that somebody's going to pay for his meal, or he just wants to get out of the cold. I said, well, you know what? I'm going to buy his meal. So I walk over to him, and I asked him, are you hungry? And he didn't say a word. And he got up, and he went up to the line there, and I said, you can go ahead and buy whatever you like. You can buy a footlong if you want. And he said, no, a 6-inch is fine with me. And so we got to the cash register. I paid for it and everything, and I looked at him, and he had tears running down his eyes. And I, of course, did too. I said, God bless you, man, because you were important. And that was a special time because it was just, you know, you don't know what people are going through, but what you do know is you have the ability to put empathy in someone else. You have empathy towards someone else, regardless of what the situation is. And it's an important aspect in most people's lives that unfortunately I don't see enough. Or we don't see enough because we tend to look at ourselves before we start looking at someone else. And one of the core values is sacrifice. Sacrifice is called many different things, defined as many different things, but our thing with 5 stars, sacrifices mean taking your eyes off someone else and off of yourself and onto someone else. And that's how I like to live.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I was actually just talking to a woman who's an actress out of, actually it's my second time talking to her, out of California, but she's written a book about being a sex and love addict, and part of what she talks about was that she actually, as she was coming to terms with her addiction, she also had to come to terms with the fact that she needed to love herself before she could love anybody in the true sense of having a successful relationship and being involved in like a healthy lifestyle. So it sounds like y'all's message is very similar because she was definitely talking about the fact that the most important person for her to love was for her to love herself, because she couldn't even get into any other kind of situations, whether that was work-related or relationship-related or family-related, until she actually came to terms with that she needed to accept herself.
Yeah, and that's hard to do because the people get so beaten down so much, they don't have the support system, unfortunately. You know, you can't just say, I want to love myself more. You have to have some kind of support system and continue with that person because it's not a one-off with me, or it's not a one-off with most people who want to help others, because it's a process. Because you know, when you talk to someone, like say for instance, someone who's being bullied. I had a 16-year-old girl that I talked to. She was bullied by one neighbor girl for 8 years. So at age 16, it was relentless, and she ended up trying to commit suicide. She was committed. She was cutting herself. She did all the things that just to try to put her away. I mean, she didn't want to deal with life anymore. So I went to her house, talked with her mother and her, and we sat there for about an hour and a half. All we did was cry. And we ended up getting to the end of the conversation. She said, you know what, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of being the victim. I don't want to be the victim anymore. And I said, you know what, that's the best thing you could say, but you've gone through this for 8 years. You just can't shut it off. It's going to take some time. But you have to be convicted that this is what you want to do. You need to make some changes in your life because it's about you making changes. It's not other people making changes. You've got to make the changes that is going to get you over the hump. And that's what I told her. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go into school, and I want you to start complimenting other people. And I want you to go up and say, your hair looks great, or whatever it is you want to say to compliment someone. Make someone feel better about themselves. And what that does is twofold. One, obviously it helps the other person because someone else said something nice to them. But in the process, it puts you in a different mindset that you're able to start feeling better about yourself because you're telling someone else. You don't have to start telling yourself that you're better, but you can change by telling someone else that they matter.
Yeah, I know that one of the things you oftentimes talk about is that whole concept which you just used in that example of positive reinforcement. And I find that a lot of times we don't even see that in the job force. A lot of times folks will not even give you positive reinforcement. They'll find the things to cut you down versus the kind of positive reinforcements that probably might help you even improve in whatever skill you're doing, whether that's a newspaper journalist that's writing articles or whether that's a weatherman that's telling the weather or a number of other fields that are out there and everything. But I find too often the corporate world has this thing of not doing as much rewarding and positive enforcement. At least that's what I've noticed. And I've even seen it to some degree in some of our institutions where they don't seem to do enough of that. And now some people have also argued that they don't want to see, how can I put it, too much positive reinforcement. Because I know I've got some friends that are somewhat upset at this whole concept of everybody getting a badge of some sort or another when you're in school and all of that. And so the concept of the thing is that everybody's going to feel positive because everybody got something. But then there are some people that feel that belittles the fact of a merit badge if everybody gets a merit badge. So I just wanted your thoughts as to whether that whole merit badge concept can work where everybody gets a merit badge. And also, do you feel that corporations don't do enough good job of doing that positive reinforcement that they should?
No, because, I have a radio show which we can talk about shortly, but I've had some guests on my show who deal with employers who have a narcissistic relationship with their employees. They feel threatened because you have someone else who is actually doing something for the benefit of the company, but they don't want to be made to feel like they're not part of that. They want to have power over another person. And unfortunately, when you go to human resources, you're behind the 8 ball because a lot of times human resources is not really there to cause problems in upper management. And I've seen that quite a bit. But the challenge is sometimes you have to cut the ties, even though you might have good jobs, but sometimes you have to cut the ties that I need to move on because I cannot live in this kind of working relationship because it is affecting me emotionally and physically. And that happens a lot because their self-worth is shot, and they go home and they take it home with them. And it makes it that much worse. It exasperates all the things in your life where you start losing your whole identity because your whole identity, what you think is what you're doing at work, and your identity at work is not of someone who's achieving anything. So it's really hard for me to tell anyone this is the way you need to do the battle. You can go to human resources, but the bottom line is you have to take a self-evaluation of what you want to do with your life and whether it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that you have to do that and have to have that kind of attitude and everything. Because I think that too often we let other people's attitudes influence what we're doing and all of that. Because I even know that many years ago I worked at a newspaper, and there was a gentleman there who had been there forever, and he was a fellow minority reporter and everything. And I sometimes felt like he was doing everything he could to sabotage me in my career, because he liked being the big fish in the small pond, because it wasn't like a major market or anything of that nature. But I do think that sometimes we even have folks that are, like you just mentioned earlier, kind of going against us even in that corporate environment. And I was wondering, even on your show, if you're seeing some things like that that have happened with some of the folks that you've talked to.
Oh yeah. And I tell people when I talk to kids a lot, this is hard for kids to do, but adults can do this, is when someone does a power play on you, or someone wants to oppress you for whatever reason, make you feel bad, I just tell them, here's what you need to say. Bob, I thought Jim would be the kind of person that would say something like that to me, but you know what? I thought you had more character than that. I thought you had more integrity, because I believe in you, and I think you're awesome. And that disarms the person on the other end. But you have to sell it with the inflections in your voice, your body language. You say it with conviction, and you say that you really mean it authentically. And you go from there, because what that does, it takes the power away from that person who's oppressing you. And that's hard to teach, because we are taught to do one of two things. One is to walk away and ignore and feel like crap because you didn't battle back, not necessarily physically or verbally. Or the second thing is you fight back yourself. You verbalize your anger or your disgust with that person, and it's just a battle back and forth. Both scenarios, you don't win. But if you come back in a firm, kind voice without lifting your voice in anger, and you say it that way, it really does work. And I have done it myself. I've been able to do that myself, and I say it with a smile. And what that does is that person sees it, and if there's coworkers or there's friends or their buddies are watching what's going on, they can see that you're not the kind of person that you want to do battle with.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense, and definitely. You also decided to do this to the book, some of them, at a late point in your life, and I'm oftentimes fascinated by that. My dad decided to become an artist probably when he was he's now in his 80s, so he probably decided to do that when he was in his 50s or 60s. So what was your reaction when you told folks that you were going to write a book at, say, age 50 and all of that, and what made you decide to do it at this point in your life, say, versus doing it when most people are thinking about doing some things like in the 30s and the 40s and even the 20s? So what made you decide that this was the time of your life to actually write the book?
Well, the thing is most everybody has always supported me throughout my life. So it wasn't like it wasn't a light bulb moment or anything like that. Yeah, I don't think I even equated my age of 52 as to say, well, it's now or never. That wasn't my mindset at the time. It was a factor of me internally saying to myself, I've dilly-dallied with the idea of doing something and not fearing success anymore. That's what propelled me to make that decision to go the second step, because I kept saying I had all the false starts in my life all the time. And I get to the point where it says, stop. You need to stop because you don't deserve this. And there was nothing on the other end of anybody else telling me to go forth, because it was all about me, because everyone supported me. But it was my decision to say, once I get to this point, I say, what's next? What's next? And I told you this before. It's because if you don't take that tack, if you don't take that mindset, you're just going to keep getting on that wheel and to that treadmill and just not going anywhere. And I always tell people all the time, I say, look, once you decide that you want to do something with your life, you have to go every single day making that decision that you've got that within yourself that you can continue doing that. And don't worry about the objections. Don't worry about the challenges, the obstructions, nothing, because they're going to happen regardless. Whether you try to avoid them or not, they're going to happen. The key is you have a plan. You plan what you want to do. And it's a plan that works. and I'm 59 now, so it's been 7 years now. And I speak in schools and in churches and organizations now. And I would have never thought about that. Are you kidding me? Not a chance. I wasn't going to get up in front and talk to people. I didn't have any desire to do that because I didn't believe in myself. But now it's from age 52, it's like entire rebirth of myself that it's just a tremendous feeling.
Wow. And who do you think are some of the folks that you use as your own motivation? Because like I said, I know that motivators oftentimes need people to motivate them. So who are some of the folks in your life that motivate you?
Well, the memory of my mother, God rest her soul, she's been gone for almost 25 years now. She fought hard. She was a single mother with 5 boys, and I was the youngest of 5 boys. But she never gave up. And that's the person that I always use as my role model because she got beat down quite a bit. And not so much verbally with anybody else. She beat herself up all the time. And I just felt to honor her, I had to make something out of my life because of her integrity, her character, everything within her. I hear this a lot from people. Says my mom was the greatest mom ever, but I got dibs on that, guys. She's the greatest mom ever that's ever been created. I have other role models. His name is Justin Moss. You guys don't know him, but he was one of the founders of 5 Star Life, and Seth Moss, who is his brother. Dave instilled in me the power of the confidence that we can achieve anything that we want as long as we keep our head in the game constantly. And if anybody ever wants to find out about Justin Moss or Seth Moss, they would change your life. And we work with kids. All of us work with kids. But when you're a volunteer coach, a mentoring coach, you're in the game, and they teach you how to be in the game. And the principles and things that they teach you can be anybody in any age can follow these principles, these core values that I talked about.
Gotcha. And tell us a little bit, you mentioned it earlier, about the radio show that you're doing, the worldwide and everything, the Life Without Limits. And what is exactly Life Without Limits? Because some people would argue that we all have limits of some sort or another, but it sounds like you're saying that we need to live that life without those kind of limitations and everything. So I'd love to know about the title, why the title, and also a little bit about the show itself, or a lot about the show itself. I'm on LinkedIn, and I connected with an Australian author, and she wrote a book called Resilience. And she asked me to be on her radio show, her first guest on her radio show, and this has been almost 2 years now. And I asked her after the show, I said, what would it take for me to get my own radio show? And so she connected me with someone down in Florida, and then we figured out what we were going to do. And because I wrote the book on bullying, I wanted to focus on that. I would invite guests to talk about their bullying experiences or anti-bullying advocates and things like that. And then I realized that when I decided Life Without Limits, it's because we so much make that decision that we limit ourselves constantly because of the obstacles that come across our lives, because we accept our limitations and we accept our path. A lot of times it's negative. And I wanted to create a show where I bring on people who have experienced some very traumatic circumstances in their life, and in the process, instead of just focusing on the problems, though we do talk about that, I wanted to be able to offer solutions, their solutions, not my solutions, how they were able to overcome their circumstances. And it's a powerful, powerful show because it impacts so many people, and I have listeners who ask questions during the show, and it's just they make comments about what's going on in the show. I mean, I've had one guy who was born with no arms and no legs. You would think in that kind of situation he wasn't going to really be able to accomplish much. Well, he did, because he during high school he was the 4th highest rated high school wrestler in the nation.
And I've seen videos of him wrestling. I mean, that's impressive enough. But he never lived a life of where he felt he was handicapped. You know, he actually is a stand-up comedian, and of course, there's a joke there, and he'll say it himself. It's self-deprecating. You know, he's a stand-up comedian. And I've had I'm not sure how old you guys are. I've had Rowdy Gaines on my show. Do you know who Rowdy Gaines is?
Yes, I've heard the name, but I'm trying to place who he is. I've definitely heard the name, but I'm trying to place in what context. He's
an Olympic swimmer. He's an Olympic gold medalist in 1984. He won 3 gold medals. And he was on the show, and he talked about enthusiasm. You know, we always have a theme. I've had Christopher Knight on my show. He was Peter Brady on the Brady Bunch. He was on my show. But a lot of every show has a theme. We talk about so many different. We talked about depression or suicide or bullying, of course. But we talked about workplace bullying, which we just discussed a little while ago.
Right.
And I continue to always look for guests who want to share their story. And in a couple of weeks, I have someone from England, and a young teenager who has his own podcast, but he stuttered all his life. And he uses his podcast as a tool for him to actually I've heard his podcast, and you don't hear him stutter. Isn't that amazing? Because he's able to overcome that terrible situation, put himself out there to thousands of people, and do his own podcast. That's just amazing.
That is truly amazing.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get another one, but I keep looking constantly for anybody else. So anybody who's listening who'd like to be on my show, I don't know if you want to give my email address, but if someone wants to,
you can definitely give the email address.
Yeah, it's TAR Books, TARBOOKS 2323 @gmail.com.
Okay. And actually, we may have some ideas for you, because definitely I had earlier today on one of my other podcasts a gentleman, Jason W. Freeman, and he is a motivational speaker, but he actually has a speech impediment, but he still does his motivational speaking and does not let the speech impediment stop him in the least bit. And he's actually in South Dakota, so he's definitely one person. And then on IBM TV network, there's a woman named Wynn, and she's actually does a regular podcast as well as a streaming podcast called Win with Win, but she actually has cerebral palsy and doesn't let the cerebral palsy stop her, and is actually, at one point, I think she was going to get like some ridiculous amount of downloads that she set as her goal, and she actually went and got that goal that she set for herself. I want to say it was something like 60,000 or something like that, but I don't remember the exact number, but I know it was a significant amount. She set that goal and has shattered that goal. She hasn't just broken the goal. She's literally shattered the goal.
I had Wynn on my show, Wynn Charles.
Yes, Wynn Charles, exactly.
Yeah, Wynn Charles. She was on my show a couple months ago. Yeah, so that's ironic. But again, I always look at the people who've come out on the other end victors, and that's just amazing how we have live a life of victim mentality a lot, because we kind of feel like we deserve being oppressed, or we deserve our lot in life. But these people that come on my show, they said nuts to this. I'm not going to live this life anymore. And in the process, I'm going to help other people. I'm going to teach people. I'm going to let people hear my story, and then I'm going to teach them what they need to do to improve their lives. And that's the kind of person I want on my show, because they figured it out. Because most people, we have 60 to 70 negative thoughts, and 60 to 70 thoughts in our minds, brains every day. 85% of what we talk about is negative, or think about is negative, and 95% of those same thoughts come in through the next day. So what you have to do is you have to reprogram your mind to focus on the positive aspect of what's going on in your life. You think of something negative, then you turn it into a positive. And a lot of people think about, well, that's easy for you to say. Well, of course it's easy for me to say, because I live it. because once something negative comes through your mind, it says, no, let's turn around. This is the reason why I'm not going to let this beat me. And you have to make that conscious decision to do that. And that's the kind of thing that I like to talk about on my show. It's because they've made these incredible guests who become really good friends of mine, and I talk to them all the time. They've got it figured out.
Yeah, definitely sounds like they've got it truly figured out, and they're doing some great advice. Now, you had earlier mentioned about bullying. I know that's what one of the books is about and everything. Why do you think that bullying is so big in the 21st century, and particularly cyberbullying? Because it seems like this is an issue that we should have conquered years ago, and I've actually got a friend that has done some movies that are revolving around that, Henry Morales out of California. He's also tackled the whole thing of teen suicides and all of that, but it just seems to me that it's something that, society should have gotten past a long time ago, and I know that part of that is me in my Shangri-La kind of moment and everything, but why is it as prevalent as it is in your opinion?
Because there's no accountability, there's no consequences, there's an anonymity with particularly with cyberbullying, because they want to stand behind the computer screen and say something and not worry about the consequences. Although it's out there, a lot of times your name is out there, but you can't do that one-on-one like you and I did as kids, because you were forced to be in that situation where if someone insulted you, you had to be there right in front of you. But in cyberbullying and social media and all that sort of stuff, the trolls just come out in droves because they feel that's the way to get your name out there, because I'm not the only one doing it, so I might as well join the fray. Let's just start beating up on someone because they're not going to be able to respond. And frequently, what you see is, particularly when like a celebrity is being trolled about different things, they're going to fight back, and I don't blame them. I actually don't blame them. But those who don't cow to those trolls, those are the people who win, because they realize they know the truth about themselves. And when you know the truth about yourself, nobody, even though it's out there in the public, people can see this, you have to have a thick skin when it comes to that, because every time someone says something that's not the truth, that's their truth. It's not your truth. And you have to make that conscious decision that it's not going to bother you anymore.
Because I know one of the things that me and Dean have talked about on this show, and I was just wondering your thoughts about it, is that it also seems that sometimes we let folks take too much control in the sense of like other forces and everything. Because I sometimes think that part of what's going on is because some of our celebrities and some of our leaders also started like bullying and doing negative tactics, that it became somewhat acceptable. I think that's why some of the things that happened several weeks back happened and all of that. So how much of the responsibility also needs to be placed at the feet of our leadership, whether that's the entertainers or the political leaders or a number of other folks? Because it seems to me that in a lot of ways, because of the whole internet, we've allowed a lot of these things to become more acceptable.
Well, it starts with, I hate to attack free speech, but, given the circumstance of what's going on, with the impeachment and all that we all have our own opinion about it. There's a fine line between free speech and a fine line to making what you say, talking about things that are untrue, that that are untrue, that you just can't say something when you know it's not true. Your goal as someone who is doing these things is to have clickbait. That's all it is, because you want to get out there in front of everybody else and say, I'm saying something that this is true. What happens then is, when you start talking about this Dominion thing, well, when Fox started talking about it, then another person at Fox said it, and then someone else said, everyone just jumps in and says, yep, it's true. If this person's saying it's true, then it's got to be true. It's like if you go to the grocery store and you walk into the cashier aisle and you see these magazines, these entertainment rags, and then they say, Brad Pitt married an alien. Well, you look at that and you say, how ludicrous is that, right? And then you see the very next one next to it, and it says Brad Pitt married an alien. well, if both magazines are saying the thing, well, then it's got to be true, right? Because there's both of them are saying these things, the same exact thing. Well, it's got to be true. And it's the same thing now with all the things that are happening in social media, is because the more people say things about whatever situation it is, they start believing that truth. And this is what happened with all this, the political rumbling after the election, because the more you say it, the more it becomes true. And then you have this following. Well, the more you pummel it, you say everything to everybody all the time. It's hard to refute, even you've got proof that it's not true. So and the other thing is the social media companies, Facebook and Twitter and Parler and you name it, they have to have some kind of responsibility for this. But they have a hard time with this, because where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line from your own personal freedoms and you be able to make your own opinions or say something, and then how do you pick and choose? Who do you choose to cut out? Who do you choose to suspend? Do you suspend it because of the political pressure? They did somewhat, but it's really hard to cut off that free speech from people. And I wish I had an answer for you guys. It's really hard.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's definitely hard and all of that. How much do you think sports plays a role as well? Because I sometimes wonder if we get so caught up in that team sport aspect that we don't do enough of this kind of respect thing even on the sports front. Of course, we just got done with the Super Bowl, and some people are big Brady fans, some people are not. But definitely, how much do you think sports is also included in kind of us having this hard wire of some of these things going negative, in the sense that we get so caught up in the competitive sense of what's going on, and that adds to the bullying?
Well, sports is it's entirely competitive environment, and you saw that last night with the taunting back and forth, and the problem is because it's televised. They know they're right in front of everybody watching what's going on. If it was between like a neighborhood game, there may be some taunting, but not to the extent of, well, here, look at me, look at these cameras that are on me now. This is what I'm going to do. And I think it was a Whitfield or whatever. He did the peace sign to Rick Hill last night, and he put up the peace sign to him. Well, he knew that the cameras were going to be on him, and he didn't show any regret or any remorse for him doing it. He thought it was pretty cool, and people, the kids, look at this thing, and they say, well, if he does it, then why can't I do it? And it just, a lot of athletes say they don't want to be role models, but in essence, they are. You can't show that on the field and walk into a classroom and try to teach these kids integrity, because integrity means who you are when nobody's looking. And in this case, people were looking.
Yep, they were definitely looking. They were definitely paying attention, and definitely, I think that you're so right about that. That folks sometimes don't even realize who is going to be paying attention to what's going on and all of that. I think we had another phone call that came in. I did want you to stay on, Tom, and everything. So, Dean, what are your thoughts about this engaging conversation we're having with Tom? And then can you bring in our other guests as well?
Very interesting, very insightful. We greatly appreciate you, Mr. Russell. Thank you for all of the insight, and it's definitely, for those that are listening, I hope y'all took heed to the message that was being given. Right now, we do have Alisha and Junius coming into the studio. So, Alisha and Junius, welcome to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. You are now on the line.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
Doing good. This is my friend Dean, and we were also talking to Tom Russell and everything. We were actually talking about his book. He's written a book on bullying, and he's also written a book about a number of other things. And he did this at the age of 52, and he's now in his late 50s and everything. And I know that you've been going through a lot of things. Dean will be glad to know that you are part of the hip-hop community, because these are two of the, or at least she is one of the founders of the North Carolina Hip-Hop Festival, but she's also been going through some very difficult times in the sense of trying to gain custody of her children and all of that. And that even comes back to what we're talking about with respect and all of that. So definitely, if you will share with our audience as well as with Tom and some of the other things to other folks that are listening from around the world, some of the things that you've been going through, and if you want to share a little bit about your hip-hop background as well, I'm sure that folks would love to hear that. But I do know that a lot of what you're trying to get out is about this very difficult fight that you're in the middle of, in the sense of trying to get back custody of your kids, and some things that have been said negatively and have painted a wrong picture, and therefore made it even more difficult to have the winning battle that you should be having.
Correct. Can you hear us well?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes, so I am the founder of the North Carolina Hip Hop Festival, and it is a festival, North Carolina's premier hip hop festival, and we promote hip hop and R&B from the old school and the new school. There's a lot of roots, hip hop roots in North Carolina, and lots of legends from that area, and so we get together and celebrate them annually, as well as introducing new artists, and we have some really awesome discussions about the hip-hop community. So, invite people to check that out and check us out on social media. Yes, I've been going through some crazy stuff relating to my children, and I've been learning a lot about, our government and how different things work for and against the people. And, and it had to be my heart, my children, that would give me the passion to take the steps to be able to delve into learning, how our society is run. And I'm surprised that, I didn't think this was important earlier, or learn earlier, the importance of the Constitution, and, that being the supreme law of the land, and that governs everything, and that protects our rights as people, as citizens of this country. And so I wanted to, I have Junius here, so he'll be sharing with us as well. We've been going through this struggle together, and with his son and my 7 children. And so I wanted to just have you picture something. And so here it goes. And looking at the idea of property and why it is important to have laws around protecting the rights of a property owner, we understand that a tremendous portion of the value placed on the item is our sweat equity. We work for years, day and night, to maintain our homes, which means that if someone tried to swoop in and move into your home like a pirate, we know law enforcement does not stand for that. Now, take into consideration the sweat equity that goes along with having a child, the literal sweat that goes into making the child, and all that goes along with that. The sweat of being full-term in the middle of August, and the sweat of labor and childbirth. The sweat of watching a newborn day and night and holding your breath to confirm that they are still breathing. The sweat of chasing after a toddler in the park in the middle of summer, or walking down a hot track half a mile to run a potty-training toddler to the public bathroom. The sweat of getting people to practice on time, or simply of having dinner ready on time. The sweat of teenagers, and soon sweat of adulthood and grandparenthood. This is a tremendous amount of sweat for something that an individual is responsible for, just as they're responsible for their car or their home. Sweat equity is one aspect of having children that signifies their value. Yet, there's a state agency that one can call and make any anonymous allegation, and they will show up at a person's door that very night like a bloodthirsty hound dog. Not to mention, they get bonuses to put children into foster care. Their ancestors have been taking children in indigenous communities for at least 400 years. They will ask you for your personal information like Social Security numbers, and they will take your children on an immediate verbal 12-hour hold if you don't easily and willingly do everything they say exactly how they say it. They will go against their own law and tell you that you can't be present with your child. They will have a remote judge who may not even be a real person fax over a signature, and they will remove your children for 7 days in an undisclosed location until the lawyer they gave you and the judge agree to remove your children on a more permanent basis. And again, they are paid by the federal government for any expense or made-up expense that they incur throughout the process. And the only stipulation from the government is that the children must be poor.
Well, yeah. So that's some of what y'all have been going through and everything. Because like I said, I knew that you were at one point in North Carolina, but now you're in Oklahoma still dealing with those court cases. And where are we at? I know that y'all are having a meeting earlier today and everything. So what is the current state of trying to get back custody and all of that? And it even comes back to kind of what we were talking about with Mr. Russell and everything, because a lot of things that go on in society are not the most respectable things in the world and things of that nature. So we were talking about respect and bullying and a number of other things before y'all jumped on the call and everything. So definitely where are y'all at? And definitely if you can tie it into the whole concept of respect. And it sounds to me like y'all are being bullied by the government.
Indeed, they're trying to bully. As she said, we're learning, excuse me, in this process. So where we're at, to be specific with you, our intentions are to sue Oklahoma, North Carolina, the United States of America. The Department of Human Services is enlisting employees who are to be public servants because, again, everybody swears themselves to the Constitution. Okay, so, again, to talk about it, we're talking about documents, we're talking about receipts, we're in the age of paperwork, get your money, game, all that, to get your business and all that. So the supreme law is the supreme law. And there's no misinterpretation about it. The words are the words that they are and say what they say. And it governs those who seek to seat in public trust. So they're supposed to honor those. They're supposed to uphold those. They're supposed to stand in that honor. They're supposed to know what that is and at all times uphold that against foreign and domestic. And as we're reading the law, because the supreme law, and then they've made up legislation, right? And even in states' constitutions, they speak Oklahoma and North Carolina's constitution. North Carolina's constitution says void to all orders that go against the Constitution. They're null and void. That's in the first article. I do apologize. I don't know what the section number is, but it's in the first article. And the first article speaks to the Bill of Rights. And this is in North Carolina. I'm just speaking about North Carolina's Constitution. North Carolina's Constitution speaks to the people have the right to their politics and to their governance. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. But you got to read it, though. And then we have to take action.
Definitely. Mr. Russell, I'm just bringing you into the conversation, but definitely it seems to me like a lot of times when these kind of things happen, that even comes back to what we were talking about with, like, respect and just kind of like having a knowledge of even what you are able to know about society in general. So whether it's bullies or schools, a lot of times I don't know that we know enough about our own rules and our own regulations, even in our school environment, much less in our family environments. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think what their approach is correct. It's because they want to do what they think is right, and a lot of times we end up going back on because we worry about there's too much obstruction. There are too many barriers. They just want to give up. So I just encourage all of you, all of you who are involved with this thing, is to never give up if you know what you're doing is right. And the definition of courage, which is what you guys are going through right now, definition of courage is doing what's right when everyone thinks that it's wrong, but they do it anyway, even though it's wrong. So you guys continue your fight, because whether you win or lose, you're showing the integrity that what you guys are doing means more than anything else.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So right now, specifically today, we learned that the judge who issued the order went outside of the statute in many different areas in order to do what she's done. And so we're in the process of learning to correct, when that happens, when a judge makes an order that is outside of the law. How do you find remedy in that? So that's where we are today. And this is the only thing that's standing in between us and our children.
Gotcha. So you're still waiting to hear from that and still hoping to get them from there to here sometime in the very near future and everything. What are some of the things that for folks that are listening, like I said, I know we've talked about it on some of my other platforms and everything, but for some of the folks that are listening, what are some of the things that you have learned most about going through this process and all of that? Because I would love to hear some of the lessons that you have learned as y'all have gone through this process.
Well, some of the things we've learned is it's necessary to stand your ground. As the gentleman said, when you know what you're doing is right. We read from, I don't know the scripture, but read from it, and it speaks to the breastplate of righteousness and the belt of truth. When it's correct, you're operating correctly, and we're talking about children, and we're talking about our children. So their interest is always at heart. We love them. That's the whole point and purpose. So we can't be idle or stand by or wait for. And in understanding that as well, as you begin to get up and move and engage this mechanism or this entities and so forth, it's just incompetent people. There's a slew of just purposely uninformed people who are in these positions of decision, and they're completely out of the way.
Like, for example, the DSS workers none of them, I've asked, and I've dealt with many of them, none of them know the law that governs their organization. They don't know the statute. They don't even know the statute number that is, in North Carolina, it's the juvenile code. It's statute 7B. And in Oklahoma, it's the children and juvenile code, and it's statute 10A. The workers, and this, inside of these statutes, it lays out specifically exactly how their job is to be done. They've never read it. They don't even know the statute number. They could at least know the statute number. It specifically lays out how do you conduct an investigation. This is laid out in the statute, and they've never read it. It just blows me away.
What they like to do is then quote, as she said, quote the statutes. In Oklahoma, they've been saying to us, because we've been dealing with one of the aunts who is putting her hands on the children. And so we've informed, again, quote-unquote entities, these so-called authorities, we've informed them that these things are happening. We received a ransom phone call in reference to if we want to see them, we need to give up their Social Security cards. You understand what I'm saying?
This is from their aunt who they're with, and she is diagnosed with mental illness, with schizophrenia, and she's who has the children. and she's hitting them. She's told them that they're not allowed to speak to us. So we haven't talked to them in some days. If they speak to us, they'll lose their phone if they find out that they've been spoken to them. And they would also get hit, according to a voice message that I have from my 8-year-old son. And she's the only one who's there. Their father's put them there, but he's not there. He's never there. And so they're being cared for by a schizophrenic person who doesn't have children, and she's hitting them. And she's said that they can't talk to us, nor their brothers who are here. And she called us and said that she would let us see them if we give her their Social Security cards. She was calling around trying to get shots for the kids, and all DSS has to say about this is as long as they don't have marks, as long as the kids don't have marks on them, there's nothing they can do. And also that people with mental illness make perfectly good caretakers. This is where we are today.
Well, that's amazing. They even put it that way and everything, and even put it in that kind of framework and everything. When you, Mr. Russell, when you hear about situations where folks are being in those kind of bully situations that are young folks and everything, because it does sound like the kids are being bullied in that sense, what kind of advice do you give them to cope with bullying situations that might be more difficult than, say, your average school bully situation?
If nothing's getting resolved with your superior right in front of you, or a teacher or administrator or principal, you go up the chain. You go up the chain until you get satisfied. And I don't know if you have gone to the media or not. I'm assuming you have. But if it takes you to go into media and explain your situation, that might put a little bit of pressure on them wanting to do something. And you have the facts to back up what you're going through and what the kids are going through. And hopefully that will happen. But basically, you need to keep going up the chain until you get the resolution that you're looking for.
Indeed.
It definitely sounds like some great advice, and I know that that's something that y'all have been trying to do, is get in touch with media both here in North Carolina as well as media there in Oklahoma as well, because definitely that's something that we need more of, is to make sure that the media stays on top of some of these stories that get lost in the cracks. Unfortunately, sometimes they get too lost in the cracks and all of that. Dean, you've come at it from the judicial standpoint, have worked in the judicial courts and having worked in the correction system. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about what they've gone through and some of the things that Mr. Russell was talking about earlier, just about bullying and respect and a number of other things. Because I oftentimes find that you have some great insight as well. So I'd love to hear some of your insights.
Unfortunately, I have no insight on that. I work in corrections, so dealing with, child protection, permanency, custody, and stuff like that, I have no clue at all. It is an unfortunate situation, yes, but there's nothing that, I'm unable to, that's not my lane, if you will. So I wouldn't be able to say, oh, this is what you have to do, because I don't even know where to start with that, man. I'm just prayerfully things will work in their favor, because we have seen incidents where somebody, like she said, like Alicia said, somebody can just pick up the phone, say X, Y, and Z, and next thing you know, you got a squad of folks at your house. They want to talk to the kids and pull them to the side, and they're asking folks questions, they're asking you questions, and all of that stuff. So, unfortunately, there's a flaw in the system where anybody can report anything, and it's treated as if it were 100% true. So, hopefully, it is all of that stuff is unfounded, and you will be reunited with your children.
Thank you. We did want to point out, not only, can somebody call and make that allegation and have them show up. With us, the first time they came, it was at 10 p.m., and they had 10 cops with them.
Yeah.
And the second time they came, because we didn't let them trespass onto our property, because it was, it's more backstory, but we didn't let them trespass. And then the next day they came back, they had 20 cops, And they had assault rifles.
Right. 3 assault rifles.
Oh, wow.
High power,
Yeah.
military grade, ready to go, ready to move.
Yes.
And it's 2 adults and it's 8 children.
Right.
And they come 20 deep, 3 assault rifles, and every officer, of course, is armed.
Right. And they kidnapped our children without a court order.
Right. I mean, we didn't even have the opportunity to be heard. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm supposed to have gone in front of the court and professed my issue or this grievance that's been brought against me, but instead I was at the top of my property line in front of my no trespassing sign against 20 officers. Well, excuse me, the night before it was 10, in which the chief came back later on after his first fleet came back. This is Bass Police, and this is also Moore County Police. Let me say that.
Sheriff.
So Bass Police and Moore County Sheriff Department. Excuse me. You know, the 2 entities. But they came together to get that overtime. You hear me talking to you? And they showed up that night at 10 o'clock. We had just did a ritual for my father because he passed away. You know, just give you some dap of what we started off with to where we are now. And dealing with the police, because with us, we're looking at the police to be able to stop them from pushing onto us. You understand what I'm saying? Because they have to go through whatever, but some sort of enforcement that they need, it would have to be the police. So we needed the counsel that we requested for. They disregarded it. They came back the next day with 20 officers, 3 assault rifles.
We have this on video.
Yeah, we do. And our 3-year-old is walking around saying, man, they got really, really long guns. You know,
and then they kidnapped her.
Yeah, took her.
Stole my keys and my purse.
Keys and the purse.
And they arrested Junius.
Yeah.
Left me there in the fetal position.
Yeah. You know.
Are you kids traumatized by this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so that started in North Carolina. Okay.
So 7 days we got our their non-secure custody order dropped, and my ex, who's an abuser, went and took the children from where they placed them at my mother's house, which is a whole nother story because she's the one who initiated it all because she had kidnapped our sons, and I had just gotten my son back from her. She had him for 2 years with no custody order.
Wake County.
And I just got him back from her the day before. So she called and, you know, made all these allegations about us. They came and I guess fulfilled what she told them to do, which was take the kids and bring her, because that's what they did. And then so the custody order got.
And they did it anonymously. She's supposed to be anonymous, but they knew who to bring the children to.
Yeah, they said it was an anonymous tip.
Right.
And I mean, we're just giving the short version.
Right. Correct.
And
right. In which he does take them and he brings them out here to Oklahoma.
Right.
And so we get into the Oklahoma system.
He hid them out there. My ex took them. They didn't return the kids to us after they took them. My ex came and brought them across state lines to Oklahoma, hid them out from me, and I wasn't able to see them or talk to them. So I filed for custody here and got an emergency custody order. And then at court, the judge, you know, he presented the information about what happened in North Carolina. And she didn't, when I got to the stand, she didn't want to hear anything except yes or no. And did the kids get taken? Yes, they did, but she didn't want to hear anything about why or anything like that. So she gave him custody pending a DHS Oklahoma investigation. So that's kind of where we are. The statute says their investigation is supposed to be within 30 days. We're at around 40 days now, and they're talking about it'll be at the end of the week.
Right, and what we're coming to comprehend and why we definitely have to sue in order to gain any level of remedy is that they are outside of the very statutes that they're hindering us with. that they're using to say that gives them the right to do such. And I'll give you this one per se that we just found today, okay? And we're in understanding that the judge that has presided over so forth, she's not at all acting within the canons that she's supposed to uphold. So this is the issue that you hear. In the event of a dispute between the parents having joint custody or a child to the interpretation of a provision of said plan, the court must appoint an arbiter to resolve and said dispute. Okay, so in every proceeding in which there is a dispute as to the custody of a minor child, a determination by the court that domestic violence, stalking, or harassment has occurred raises a reputable presumption that sole custody, joint legal or physical custody, or any shared parenting plan with the perpetrator of domestic violence, harassing, or stalking behavior is detrimental and not in the best interest of the child. And it is in the best interest of the child to reside with the parent who is not a perpetrator of domestic violence, harassing, or stalking behavior. Okay, so that clearly states that if one person causes violence upon the other, then the child must be with the one who has been violenced against. Clearly states that. And so, as she said, she got the emergency order in which she gained the custody, but going to the show cause, now to call her out, Judge Oaks, who's sitting on the bench, hears him make an allegation. And as she stated, she only asked 2 questions, but she didn't even go through the record. Because had she gone through the record, she would have seen the evidence of the history of abuse, the history of violence that Ms. Muhammad has gone through. So she made an order and a decision that took the children out of our hands.
Right, and now they're all day with a woman who is diagnosed with schizophrenia, and hitting them. She told them that they can't talk to us. They're in fear to talk to me or their brother, and she's tried to coerce us to trade seeing the children for their Social Security cards. And the police in the area have said that if I go there, I would get arrested for trespassing.
Right. And we have evidence, though. That's the thing. We have, documentation, recordings, videos, so forth, of these things happening. And it's like, as you said, sir, I do apologize, but as you said, we have to go up the chain. We're going up the chain, and we're just finding this ceiling of corruption as we continue to go up these chains. But these people don't stand, at least on the oath that they've sworn to. That's what puts them in the seat, is the oath. Whatever the policy is whatever. You can really operate outside the policy because the oath is why you have the seat. So we're not understanding that we're standing here as the people saying, hey, look, these things are happening, we're being grievance and so forth. And they're actually aiding and abetting in the grievancing that's happening.
It seems to me that's one of the number one things, and maybe Mr. Russell could correct me, that bullies in general do is that they find ways to exercise control and to use that control, no matter what type of bullying it is that is going on, whether that's governmental bullying or school bullying or a number of other things. But it does seem to me that that's one of the number one tactics that bullies and folks use in general, is that kind of ways of gaining control. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah, because they know they basically think they have control over this. I had a question, though, is do you know what her ulterior motive is? The reason why she did this, the reason why she wants to keep the kid?
No, the ex is a abusive narcissist, and he's utilizing his sister, who is the schizophrenic, to hold them there while he's at work. And DSS from DSS to Judge O is not providing the remedy that they're supposed to within the very statutes that govern them. And the thing about it is, like, we're being told that, again, in Oklahoma, it statute says it's okay to hit the children. And then when we told them, well, your statute says you have to be done within 30 days, they said, well, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Yeah, that's what it's. I don't know if the statute says that. It sounds like you know stuff about. This is what they're telling us. It sounds like you know something about this, but that's their job. So they're incompetent to their job.
Because, Mr. Russell, it sounds to me like, from what I'm hearing, and I've heard a little bit of it some of the last couple of days, but it sounds to me like that part of it is the whole control mechanism. And I know that a lot of times in bullying and in relationships and a number of things, particularly involving children and things along those lines, that control is a lot of times what the controlling factor is. So it does sound like that they're almost using the kids as pawns, as part of a control game. And now what the end game is, who knows? Like I said, if there are different people with different personalities, who knows what their end game is. But it does sound like they're almost using the kids as pawns. And I've had friends of mine that have had, even in divorce situations, that happened where the kids were used as pawns, and sometimes that even is part of the reasons that they become bullies later in life, because they have been manipulated. That's just an observation that I've seen happen in some of my friends' lives and everything. But I was just wondering, is that even what you found in some of your bullying work, is that a lot of times folks are using different methods of control in order to control the situation, whatever that situation is?
Yeah, well, it's clear in this situation that the kids, like you said, that they're being pawns. It's not about the kids anymore. It's about I'm hearing that it's more of a financial situation. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just kind of concerned that the longer this goes on, the more control that they feel that they have, and it's just. It's a tough situation because they're expecting you to give up. And I think that's what a lot of bullies do. They expect at some point, because if you keep pounding on them, whatever the situation is, that they're just going to walk away. You just can't walk away from this. And I know you guys aren't, because this is important to you. But I just encourage you. Have you had a conversation with them at all? A constructive conversation with them at all?
With who?
Well, with it's the aunt, right? And and the ex. But have you had a conversation with them?
Not them together. So.
But separately, you've had conversations with them in separate environments, but not in the same space, in the same place.
Right. I've, like I said, I've experienced many years of abuse from my ex. Very serious. And I don't feel comfortable being in a space with him. But what were you going to say?
No, I just kind of wonder, because a lot of times when you get into situations, if you unfortunately you're leaving it up to the courts to try to resolve this, and it's clear that's not happening. But I don't know if it's fear, because I don't know what the kind of relationship you have with them. But if it's fear, they know that fear; they can smell it from you. But if you I guess if you approach it in a way where you try to get a constructive, organic conversation with them. To find out, number one, the reason why they want to do this, and number two, you just have to say, well, here's what I'd like to do, resolve it, and put the ball in their court. And if they refuse, then you're just still going to have to continue what you're doing. And I still encourage you, if you can somehow get with the media, and just see what you can get out of that. Because if the courts aren't doing it, you got to find some way to get the word out.
Yeah, and in addition to the media, the other thing is, as Mr. Russell was talking, that I was just thinking about, and I hadn't thought about this before, but I don't know what it is in Oklahoma. I know in North Carolina there are different, and I think in New Jersey as well, there are different mediation services that are actually outside of the realm of the courts. And so I don't know if you've even thought about going that route or even thought about going that route, because sometimes you have to find an outside mediator that is outside of even the court system in order to even have true resolution. But I don't even know if that's an option there in Oklahoma. I know there are mediation services here in North Carolina whenever you get back here, but definitely I don't know what exists in Oklahoma, unfortunately.
So where we are now is I actually was advised to dissolve the case, which I did. And so the judge is still trying to say that he has custody even though the case has been dissolved. And so it's kind of like a legal argument now as to whether that's true or not. And, with that not being true, it's kind of back to shared custody. And I feel that I can get them from the aunt because she's not their parent. So we kind of went to do that today, get them out of that dangerous situation, and then, I feel, what did you say?
No, I was listening to you. I was hearing what you were saying.
Oh yeah, I was saying I feel that, that I'll be able to do that. I was talking to the captain of the patrol officers there in that town, and he was supposed to be, he went to talk to the DA about it, and she said I should go file for custody in that town. And so we went there today to do that, but it's all icy here, and the courthouse was closed. So he said that he was going to talk to their attorney to determine, because if it's dissolved, that means, she can't hold my children from me. If he's not there, I have every right to pick up my children. And so the judge is trying to say her order still stands, even though the case has been dissolved. And from what our research says, that's not true. That if the case is dissolved, everything that happened within the case is also, or if the case is dismissed, which is, I did a voluntary dismissal, that everything that's happened within the case is also. So I'm waiting to hear back from him, as far as them escorting us there to get the children from what would be considered a babysitter situation. So that's kind of where we are, and the judge still trying to say that he has custody even though I dismissed the case.
Yes. And if there were folks coming back to what Mr. Russell was saying that are interested in, and I do have some friends that listen to this show as well as some of my other shows on a regular basis, even out of the media community and everything. So if there were folks that were listening that are attached to the media that wanted to learn more about the case and more about what's going on in the case, and even find that kind of advocacy, investigative journalism work that Mr. Russell is talking about to help the case, how would they reach you and how would they get in touch with you if there are folks that are listening that are part of that media community? They can help you, whether it's in Oklahoma or whether it's folks here in North Carolina. But how would folks reach you in order to be able, and Junius, in order to be able to help with the situation?
So folks can reach us by calling or texting us, and the phone number is 910-710-3600. That's 910-710-3600.
Okay, definitely. So hopefully folks will be listening, and hopefully they will reach out to you, because I do have some friends, like I said, in the media communities that listen to this show as well as some of my other shows as well. And we still got about another 15 minutes, so I definitely want to touch on a couple of other things as well. Mr. Russell, and one of the things I was really curious about, and it's another issue, so we talked about bullying and human rights and everything else, but you also have dealt with some research about folks that do self-mutilation, and I'm always fascinated by that, because I oftentimes can't figure out why folks would even dare to hurt themselves and everything. So what is some of the reasons that you find out that people are doing that when they do these self-mutilations? Because every time I've heard of particularly young people doing that, I'm sitting there going like, that's like the extreme way of backlash and the extreme way of hurting yourself and all of that. But I've never quite understood why folks would even go to that extreme.
Because that's how they value their life. Because they do this because they feel this is what's the word I'm trying to think of? That is the definition of what they want to. I'm not really in tune with the cutting. Other fact of this girl who was cutting herself, she felt that was her only way of dealing with her trauma, and she couldn't vocalize what she was going through. So she cut herself, and what she was doing, she wasn't telling her parents because she always wore long sleeves, and it was a constant situation for her because her parents finally found out. She was wearing long sleeves in the summertime, and when her parents found out, that's when she had to go into the deeper therapy. And it's really it's unfortunate that people do this. It's because they look at that. That's how they like, not definitions. Not the word isn't definition. That's how they value their existence. Is because when they start cutting themselves, they feel like this is the path that they need to choose because they can't vocalize their pain and trauma with someone else.
Well, that's amazing that they would even go to that extreme. And another thing that we talked about before Junius and Alisha got on and everything was also about the nature of homelessness and all of that. And a lot of times, I think, like I mentioned before, that we don't give the homeless as much respect as we should. And also, I don't know that we necessarily give folks that go off the grid as much respect as we should as well. And I know to some degree that's what Alisha and Junius have done in their own lives and everything. But definitely, what are some of your thoughts about why we don't give people that are not necessarily going about the norms or whatever the norms are, whether that's living in a house or living in a different other kind of situations, the kind of respect, where a lot of times folks are doing it just because of various reasons. I know some folks that have gone off the grid just because they wanted to escape some of mainstream society and all of that. But I'm just wondering all of your thoughts about folks that opt to go off the grid and not necessarily get caught up in mainstream lifestyles.
Well, I mean, those kind of situations are rare. I mean, I shouldn't say rare, but the main issue with homelessness, from the research that I did, was it's a combination of drug addiction, alcoholism, and mental illness. Those are the three main things that happen with in their lives. And when they don't have a support system to help them out, they feel that there's no other recourse. And a lot of people will end up losing their job, they're losing their family, and their only recourse is to walk away from it. And what happens is how we treat homeless people, and I see this all the time. And you see this in every city in the country. Is you see people hold these placards out there in these intersections all the time, and your thought process, what you're thinking about is, they're just going to take this money and they're going to use it to buy more alcohol or more drugs. And in some cases that does happen. But what I've chosen to do is I connect with those people who are doing this, and I talk to them. You want to find out what's going on in their life if you can do this, because obviously you don't want to throw money at them and say, have a nice day. But if you get a chance to actually talk to someone who's in that situation, find out their story, it just shows that you have empathy, that you care about someone else, and they're not used to that. They're used to people giving money and just walking away and saying, God bless you. But when you just take that extra step and ask these people and talk to them and tell them that they matter and that they care about them, that may not change their life situation, because once you walk away, it's just a pattern of behavior, a pattern of your thought process. I'm here because I've chosen to be here, and I'm not going to be able to get out of it. And the situation is, I see it a lot, is they become homeless, and then they're able to get back into the mainstream society, but they don't have they don't have the behavior and acceptance with themselves to continue this, and they fall in the same pattern of either drug addiction or alcoholism or whatever it is. They go back to the life that they lived before, and it's a cycle that unfortunately you see a lot, particularly where I live. You see the same people over and over again, and we've got homeless shelters and things like that, but it's unfortunate that those homeless shelters are packed. They're packed, and these people in sub-zero weather, you see them walking around all the time, and it's just a sad situation.
Yeah, they're packed, and two things that, as you were saying, that crossed my mind is, one, I imagine it's got to be even harder in this day and time because, unfortunately, because of the pandemic and a number of other things that are going on in society, we don't have as many people that are even walking around with cash. I know I generally don't have that much cash on me, if at all. So even when I'm approached by the homeless, I can't necessarily give them that much in terms of cash because I'm usually that credit card society that we are so much a part of. So I'm imagining that that's what's going on around the world a lot. That a lot of times people, even if they want to give them money, can't give them money because they don't have the money to give them. They've got that plastic credit card of one form or fashion or another. And then the other thing is I do know that some of the homeless shelters also put people out at a certain hour. So that also kind of comes back to what you're talking about. So they have to be out at like almost like regular business hours. So they have to be out at, let's say, 7 or 8, and they can't come back in till like 7 or 8, which means that those 12 hours they've got to cope any way that they can, whether that's panhandling or walking the streets or even, in some cases, going to the library or a number of other places in order to basically kill time until they can go back into the shelter. And even in that case, some cases, hope that there's space in the shelter when they come back because sometimes those are rotating doors.
Yeah, and they don't get to stay there day in and day out. I mean, they could be there for a certain amount of time, and then they have to move out. And there's more than one homeless shelters. They bounce back and forth between a lot of the homeless shelters, and that's the environment. That's the way society works, at least in where I live. And I think, you talked about the money, not having money, and I understand that. But the reason why people give money to homeless people is to, it's not, I shouldn't say that, but I'm going to say it anyway, is to make you feel better that you're doing something for someone else. And that's okay. That's altruistic, and I understand that. But it's more about connecting with someone, looking someone in the eye, and giving them love and kindness. And that's what's the most important. It's not the money. The money is only going to last so long, and you don't even know what they're using that money for. It doesn't really matter. What really matters is whether it's money or kindness. Is you're showing someone that that they're not scourges of society, and it's missing. And I that's the reason why I wrote this book, is because I want to let people know these are human beings. These aren't just pedestals standing there in the intersection and just have a blank stare in their face. There's someone behind that, and until you find yourself getting inside their lives, they're going to continue that way, and that they think this is their destiny, this is their fate, and I don't like seeing that.
And I would even argue that it seems to me that a lot of us are only probably 1 or 2 paychecks or the lack of 1 or 2 stimuluses away from being in that situation ourselves. And I know that that's a cliched remark that a lot of people give, but I can tell you that even in the last several years, I've seen that even in my own life, that we're probably only a short step away from not being too far out in those situations ourselves. And definitely with the way that economies have gone, hopefully, things are on an uptick and things will improve, and we'll also get this pandemic under control. But right now, we're all probably just a step or 2 away from being in these kind of situations.
Oh, man, I feel so blessed. I've been in a job that I've been able to, I drive for a restaurant delivery company. And obviously with the pandemic, it just, the business just boomed. It exploded. And I'm so blessed when I think about this, and that I always worry about other people. I don't worry about myself. When I see someone going through the grocery line and I see that they're struggling, I'll pay for what it is. I don't do it just because I want to get lauded or applauded or thanked or whatever. I do it because it's necessary. It's
Mark.
forward, and it's,
yes.
It's something that has to be done from the heart, and not because of the pocketbook.
No, definitely.
Mark,
what were you going to say, Alisha?
Yeah, I wanted to speak on what you guys are talking about, and kind of make the intersection with what you said before as far as living off grid, and people who I wanted to point out that there are people who you guys might consider to be homeless, like the man that you see on the street, who is homeless, who chooses to live that way because he has the freedom to do so. And I want to specify that, he has the freedom to do that under the Constitution. It allows him the freedom to live however he wants. And if just because you don't understand it doesn't mean you have the right to judge him and that he's not happy. I also wanted to point out, we have an off-grid situation going on where we stay in hotels, and then, when it's permissible, we stay there on our land, and we farm, we meditate, we enjoy nature. And some people, like the judge, she didn't know what off-grid even meant at all. And our children are nature oriented, and they love, like my 6-year-old, he catches lizards all day, and we have wild growing muscadines covering our property, and we choose, like, I'm the director of the North Carolina Hip Hop Bill, the founder, people want to try to judge us, I guess. I feel like it's more of a racism, to where we wouldn't be choosing to teach our children, we choose it, especially in this time, in this pandemic, and nobody can touch each other or see each other. Nature is where it's at right now. And, there seems to be a lot of judgment about us, and that came up in our hearing. Was the prosecutor was saying, as far as, what did he say?
Living off the grid isn't against.
Oh yeah, living off grid is not against the law, right? And his argument is it would be above or below a line relating to if it's okay. And my argument is who's to determine what that line is. My argument was they had 16 years of safety to compete with. I can see if something had happened to our children, and then you have an argument. But our children are perfectly fine. Our 6-year-old, he, after they took him with those assault rifles, he's like, they said they're protecting us, but we were already safe. We intentionally we're a tribe, and we're very close knit, and then people, judge. And like he said, you look at someone and you think you know who they are, and yes, it's a real person who's behind there, and we are real people, and I think that has been challenged throughout history relating to us being black, and our humanity. That's everywhere in the media right now. Black Lives Matter, that's it right there, So I think it seems that our struggle is more systematic and, more of this systematic approach to denying black people or, trying to, turn black people away or, I feel that that's really more of what we've been going through. But we chose to exercise our freedom. We know the Constitution. We know we have the right to secure life, liberty, and happiness for us and our posterity. We know this and we choose this, but, so this is what we're up against.
Yeah, I'm definitely going up against a lot, and we're actually winding down on the time. I think that I've only got about a few minutes to go and everything, but I do think that Mr. Russell is right. In a lot of times we just need to sit down and talk to the folks that we are, sometimes society in general is making statements about and all of that, because a lot of times they have very fascinating stories and fascinating things that we can learn from them and everything. Just because a person is going through hard times, whatever those hard times, does not mean that they are not a vital part of society, and a lot of times they can tell us a lot of stories. I know that I've become friends with a couple of folks that are homeless in the local Durham area, and we have some very fascinating conversations, and they have definitely given me some life lessons, and I'm sure that I have given them some as well to some degree or another. But definitely I think that that's something that we need to have on a more regular basis, is just having these kind of candid conversations, including with folks that might be going through whatever crisis or troubles that they are going through, because I think too often we do kind of like get stubborn and don't share enough. One of the things, and before Dean comes on and shares all of the places that we re-air this at and everything, I know one of the things that we love to do with all our guests is give them an opportunity to give any positive thoughts, positive encouragement that they want to give to the listening audience. So I'll start with you, Tom, since you were my first guest, and then come to Alisha and Junius. But any words of positivity that you would like to share with our global audience, because we do air on a couple of platforms, including one out of India. So any kind of words of wisdom that you would like to share with our global audience?
Real quick, I didn't say where the show is. It's the W4WN.com. That's the Life Without Limits. And the biggest thing about life is you have to make a conscious decision that I want to make something of myself, and not let the outside influences dictate where you want to go with your life. And with the two guests that are on here, I want to thank you so much. You made me smile because you are making a difference in your life, and you're standing by what you believe is right. And just keep it up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alisha, Junius, any words of encouragement that you want to give to folks as you're going through your own struggles, but other people might need to hear words of encouragement from y'all as y'all are going through the things that you're going through?
Just to, let me get the promotion out the way, right? So you can also email blackliberationmatters@gmail.com. That's blackliberationmatters@gmail.com. Also, check out Work It Out on iTunes by Junius Edward. Check out Work It Out on iTunes by Junius Edward. But the thing that we definitely want to leave behind is unity. And it's mandatory. It's necessary. We've been on the cusp. We're in the cusp of it right now. There are agendas going on, objectives going on that are seeking to divide us, that are seeking to have us attack each other and so forth. And the truth of the matter is, we're going to get down to paperwork and receipts. The Constitution, as far as America is concerned, is the supreme law of the land, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's for all of us. And we're all free people out here. So as long as you ain't trying to hurt me, I ain't trying to see no harm come your way either. And we want to leave behind and always have around us unity, love, integrity, honor. Those things aren't hard to do, to uphold. You just got to eradicate the evil that's out there.
Definitely agree with you on that. Junius, you're going to
allowing us to get on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You got anything you want to add to that, Alisha, before I bring on Dean and he shares all the places that we'll be airing this at later on, as well as our other platforms?
I would like to share the North Carolina Hip Hop Festival will be held on June 19th. That's Juneteenth this year. We will be going virtual this year. So visit us at nchiphopfestival.com. That's NC, like North Carolina, hiphopfestival.com. And, if you're an artist, submit your music. Send us an email at nchiphopfestival@gmail.com or info@nchiphopfestival.com. We want to hear your music. We want to provide a great experience. So we look forward to doing that.
Sounds good. And by the way, Dean is part of the marketing team for Ninth Wonder and his whole crew, but he can tell you about that as he comes on and everything. But they're the folks that handle not just Ninth, but Rhapsody and a number of those other great performers as well. And he is definitely a long-time and big-time hip-hop fan. Dean, I'm turning it over to you to tell them anything else that you want to add to what I just said.
I really don't have anything to add other than thanking our guests for, joining us tonight, and great conversation. We appreciate you. It's Straight Talk with Dean and Mark, y'all, Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to catch our replays on the Skyhawk Radio Network tomorrow and Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you missed those, we do have replays, and we have replays on Radio Public, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Podfollow, Deezer, J Savin, and right here on Blog Talk Radio, where we are a part of the Level Podcast Network. You can catch other shows such as the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause, the Chef Gang Radio Show, Funk from the Front Seat, Funk Music with Zach, Learning Unwrapped, Let's K-12 Better, Marketing with Rush, #Rush Selfie, Mona Shake and the Minority Reports, Mullings, Music and Memories with Mark Lee, The Online Dinner Party with Mark Lee, the Plant a Good Seed Podcast, the Reinvention Road Trip, She's on Call, the Just Podcast, the Mark Lee Show, the Spinach Social Hour, Virginia Interface Live, and WNC Original Music. Again, y'all, like I always say, when you walk outside your front door, it's showtime and the world is your stage. Just make sure that people are not watching the rehearsal. With that being said, it's a six-man Dean Geronimo. Have an outstanding week. Hey, y'all, next week is the holiday, so catch the replay, and we see y'all in 14 days.
That's right. We'll see them in 14 days with another edition. I'll be still reaching out to Potted and a number of other sources to get us some more amazing guests so we can continue this great conversation. And like Dean said, he's going to go out there and enjoy some time with that lady love of his and everything. So that's one of those holidays. It's definitely President's Day, but there's also Valentine's Day around there as well. So we'll be doing our other two shows on the streaming platform on that particular day of the 15th, but we'll be away from this platform until the 22nd. But do look forward to having some more amazing guests, and I'm sure that Dean and his queen will be having a very enjoyable time. As who knows, maybe he'll take her to a restaurant, or maybe he'll give her some flowers or something else, or maybe they'll just spend some good old-fashioned quality time together, because that's what Valentine's Day is all about.
Well, it depends, because you know what? Valentine's Day, for me, has been every day for the last 20 years. So, we might just watch a little Netflix or something. But, hey, y'all, make sure to always stay upbeat. And as long as you're still standing, always figure out what's going to happen next. Stay positive. Stay blessed. We see y'all.
That sounds good. We'll catch y'all in 2 weeks. Y'all have a good one.